Hello again, and welcome to the MulesWriter Chronicles podcast. I am Craig Marlatt, the MulesWriter, and the stories you will hear on this podcast are from my own life. Stories which you may find totally outrageous, hard to believe, or both. Laughter is a good medicine, and sometimes just surviving another day is a good reason to believe there's something better up ahead. I've found that everything has a lesson to teach us if we are listening and are not afraid to keep changing and growing from the things we experience in life. So stay with me for the next several minutes, and maybe you will hear something in this story that sounds like echoes from your own life as well. Now hop up here on my mule and let's go back into the past to see what we can learn from my next story, the Glutton Special and the Quest for Manhood. I'll take 2 Big Macs, a double cheeseburger, 2 apple pies, 2 large French fries, and a supersized Coke. Oh, and let me have a couple of those fish sandwiches, too. I couldn't believe my ears as I stood at the counter of the McDonald's restaurant at Star Ferry in Kowloon with my new young friend, whom I had invited to have lunch and to meet my family. We had first met in language school while taking a Cantonese course in Hong Kong. Jan Ikonen was a young Swedish boy who had come there as a volunteer with a Christian youth organization called YWAM. I had since taken him under my wings, and he had decided to stay and work with me after his volunteer period was over. This was his first time meeting with my wife and children, and we were to meet for lunch there at McDonald's. As we stood in line, our jaws dropped, watching him place an order that was big enough to choke a horse, as though it was a normal lunch for him. "You have someone else meeting you here?" I asked Jan. "No," he said, "just me. Why, is something wrong?" He laughed, flashing his trademark grin that was half inquisitive, half sarcastic. "Nope, just wondered," I lied as I rattled off the food list my wife and children had given me to the smiling young Chinese girl behind the counter at McDonald's. "He's a growing boy," my wife whispered, seeing my concern. "I guess he likes to eat a lot. Do you think all Swedish people are like him?" At this, my 9-year-old son Daniel interjected, "I think I might need a couple more burgers myself, Dad," not to be outdone by this stranger he was quickly beginning to like. "And maybe some more fries, too," he chimed in. Jolene just smiled, taking it all in as though she knew something I didn't, though even she was surprised when Jan topped off his light snack with a large chocolate milkshake. Over the next 2 years, this became a regular occurrence whenever Jan joined us for eating out. His youthful enthusiasm for food would trigger a similar need in my son Daniel, the two of them now actually enjoying our astonishment and doing their best to keep us amused. Jonathan, our younger son, quickly joined the fun, and though only 4 years old at the time, he would do his best to keep up with the 2 older boys. I wonder if some guy named Yar once sat in a cave watching in shock as his teenage son Snarg consumed an entire water buffalo for the amusement of the visiting neighbors. It seems there is something inert in the human male that kicks in when there's a food challenge to be met. A more recent case in point would be the Japanese man who just set another world record for hot dog consumption. Though small in stature, he managed to consume over 50 hot dogs and buns while defending his previous world championship status before a worldwide television audience. Yahoo! Apparently, it has nothing to do with race, size, or appetite, but is more a warped test of manhood that is passed genetically from father to son. Make me proud, boy. I myself am not unfamiliar with such behavior. Though growing up in the conservative Midwestern town of Kalamazoo, Michigan, it pleased God to bring me face to face with my own appetite demon in a small ice cream shop named Mersh's. Now every young boy likes ice cream. It is ingrained in his DNA and begins to reveal itself at an early age, usually while slathering his happy face with a fistful of chocolate or vanilla sitting in a high chair before his proud parents.
He is so adorable.
Later, there's the cone happily smeared on his shirt and face while visiting the local zoo or park. This behavior is continuously reinforced by such public nuisances as the ice cream man, who ding-a-lings his way through the neighborhoods of America, upsetting the natural balance of life at $1 a pop. But no one understood this natural phenomenon more than Mersh's. Though at home we usually had to settle for the old cheap box of pink, white, and brown Neapolitan iced milk, Occasionally my father would take us to Mersh's. Real ice cream in a tub, served up scoop by scoop. At Mersh's, one's imagination could take flight with peanuts, maraschino cherries, chocolate syrup, and a host of flavors and choices to delight the craving of any young boy. And behind the counter, just above the malt machine, stood a single sign that read, Glutton Special. Eat 2 and they're free.
Yummy.
This single statement, which at first seemed an innocent jest, slowly worked itself into my brain like a brass screw, twisting and turning in my mind until it eventually unearthed the natural genetic inclination deep within me that revealed itself in 4 stupid words.
I can do that.
Had I never seen that sign at Mersh's, I might be a different man today. Maybe a doctor or a famous playwright, politician, maybe even president. Who knows? But God, having his own sense of humor, saw fit to burden me with this one single challenge, knowing that I must step up to the plate and prove the universal human reality. All have sinned and come short of the glory of God. Uh-oh. It was obvious to me that the glory of God was the Glutton Special, and I soon discovered that I, too, was a sinner.
I'm a bad boy.
Now, the Glutton Special was a large banana split consisting of 7 scoops of homemade ice cream, 3 sliced bananas tucked neatly on the sides, topped with crushed walnuts, diced pineapples, peanuts, 3 spoonfuls of flavored sauces and chocolate syrup, all covered with whipped cream and topped with 6 maraschino cherries. The price was a mere $1.75, but cost didn't matter at the time since I knew in my heart I was up to the challenge of the plain yellow and blue sign posted behind the malt machine that read, Glutton Special. Eat 2 and they're free. Besides that, I was flat broke, except for a few coins I had saved for purchasing braid at Crosstown Park. My brother Terry had somewhat of a reputation for the impossible, but I was new at this type of thing and decided it would be best if I brought him into the plan. He was usually the one making the challenges, but in this case I knew I could depend upon his innate sense of superiority to try to keep his status as the toughest guy around.
What?
There was no way that he was going to let me attempt such a task without coming along to prove who the better man was. If I could eat 2, it stood to reason that he could probably handle 3. Having accepted the challenge, we headed down the Crosstown Parkway toward our eventual destination at Mercer's Ice Cream Shop. We passed by the park and stopped to buy some braid from the summer craft instructor there. Snake braiding a wristband or key holder would help to eliminate any possible anxieties that might develop along the way and divert us from the appointed task. Besides, one had to build up an appetite for such things, and it would be best if we hit Mercer's around noon when we would already be naturally hungry. Part of our preparation had been to skip breakfast that morning, making us all the more able to meet the challenge of the yellow sign with blue lettering. The words, Eat 2 and they're free, reverberated in my mind as we left the park for our next stop at 3 Ponds. Now, 3 Ponds was one of our regular summer activity venues, as we liked to fish and throw bread to the massive carp that meandered carelessly along the water's edge. Here we had spent many a lazy day just being boys, and it was here also that we had an unusual experience that jolted us with the sometimes harsh reality of life. One day, as we were playing in the lot above the easternmost pond, a lady asked Terry to hold her purse while she climbed down the steep bank to look at the fish. After about 20 minutes, we realized something was wrong and discovered the lady had in fact committed suicide by walking out into the deep water of the pond. When the police arrived, we told them what had happened, and Terry gave them the lady's purse. It was quite a shock to see her again for the second time as they pulled her body from the murky waters. This event passed into our memory banks for later reference, but on this day, 3 Ponds would be merely a stopover where we could throw rocks in the water and contemplate the undertaking that was now causing us to have great excitement. I heard a truck driver once ate 4 all by himself, Terry remarked, in an effort to minimize any concern that might be fixing itself to our young imaginations. Noon was fast approaching, and our stomachs were reminding us that we had a date with destiny. When we arrived at Mercer's, we made certain that the deal was still in place, noting the sign still firmly pasted to the wall behind the malt machine. Finding a booth that offered plenty of room for stretching out, we told the man at the counter we would have 2 Glutton Specials, one for Terry and one for me. As we sat at the soda bar watching him prepare the 2 huge banana splits, our confidence soared. Like a master craftsman, he carefully scooped the ice cream from the large cardboard tubs, then peeled and sliced each of the 6 bananas required to make our order complete. Next, he added the additional condiments and topped them with whipped cream and 7 cherries each, then delivered them to our booth where we sat, ready to make a serious dent into 2 gigantic desserts that now loomed before us on the table. After handing us our spoons and a generous supply of paper napkins, he left us to the task at hand. I don't know why it is that a banana split or any large ice cream dessert seems smaller on a picture than it does when sitting before you in a live personal appearance. This was no doubt going to take all the appetite we could muster, but far from intimidated, we began diving in with the long-handled Sunday spoons, eager to prove our manhood, as our ancient ancestor Snarg and so many others who had come before us had done in their own times. We were committed now, and there was nothing left to do but plunge forward headlong into the abyss of gluttony. Terry and I looked at each other and grinned, not yielding to the fear that lay just below the surface in both of us. The first bites went relatively easy, as we wholeheartedly leaned into the battle at hand. Starting with the cherries and whipped cream and then working away at the nuts and pineapples, we were soon both happily attacking the ice cream and toppings with a gusto that comes only with the ignorance of youth. By the time we finished the last bananas in each of our clear glass dishes, we knew we were in trouble. Neither of us would look at the other, our brains now feeling the bite of so much frozen delight in one sitting. "You boys ready for the check?" the waiter asked, not having been informed yet that we were here on a quest in search of our manhood. "We'll each have another one, please. That was pretty good, but we're still hungry." "We're going to take the challenge that's on that sign behind the malt machine," Terry blurted out, now bringing us into the center of attention of everyone else in the place. It seemed as though all the other tables moved 3 feet closer to our booth, so that now our own cheerleading section surrounded us. By this time, the manager took note of our predicament, but since he had no idea that we were penniless, he went along and began to make the next 2 Glutton Specials as ordered. This time there was no watching from the bar, but both of us sat braiding away to take our minds off the torture that lay ahead. I was working on a new design I had not previously braided, a hangman's noose. I now began to understand what could have driven the woman over the edge into the deep, murky waters of the pond. "Would you like some water to wash down the ice cream?" the waiter queried, seeming unaware that we were both sweating and trembling beneath our cool facades of youthful confidence. "Okay," was all I could say, not willing to waste any energy on something as useless as talking. My mind was now focused completely on the huge monstrosity, staring up at me from the tabletop of our ever-shrinking booth.
Man, that's big.
"Hey, this one's bigger, isn't it?" I queried the waiter, who now just looked at us both and smiled, the first indication that he recognized a battle was taking place, a battle he had obviously witnessed before. Terry, on the other hand, had regained his composure, and lifting one side of his upper lip in that tough guy smirk that was his alone, he said, "What's the matter? You're not man enough to handle this?" I gulped under my breath, but managed to ignore him and dive into the next bite of special number 2. If I was going to lose, it would not be without a good fight. I know what's wrong, I thought to myself. I need to start with the bananas, and that will make the rest go down easier. I glanced at the man sitting at the table nearest our booth. He seemed to recognize my situation and nodded his approval, as though he knew I had made a decision that would make or break my final outcome. Ooh. This move, in fact, made no difference at all, and by the time I did get to the ice cream, I was taking only small bites followed by drinks of water in the hopes of thawing my now paralyzed larynx. Each bite made my brain freeze as the muscles in my throat dropped down to 50 below zero, sending a shooting pain up through my sinus cavities to the frontal lobes of my forehead. I looked across the table and noticed my brother's overconfidence had fallen steeply, and he was faring no better than me. About midway through the second effort, the manager came to the table and told us 45 minutes had passed, and we only had 15 more to finish the job. "What? There's a time limit?" I asked, striking out at my best effort to pass the buck back to the manager. "We never knew there was a time limit. You should have told us that before we started." Terry then followed up with statements like, "Hey, man, that's false advertising. That should be on your sign, shouldn't it? I don't think it's fair. And what about that truck driver? Did he have a time limit? Give us another hour and we'll finish off the second ones." The manager just laughed and asked for the $7 that now represented our accumulated bill for the 4 Glutton Specials. Then we dropped the bomb. "We don't have any money. Can we wash dishes or something to pay the bill?" He was not amused. In the end, he called our dad at work and he came and paid the bill. He then sent us home to await the inevitable whipping scheduled for later that night. We had tried to tell him that they had somehow cheated by not telling us of a time limit, but he also was not amused by that defense. We got the whippings. It took a few decades for me to recover from the humiliation and defeat that had attached itself to me that day long ago at Mercer's ice cream shop. I now had children of my own, including a son who had met his own food challenge across the table from my young Swedish apprentice in Hong Kong. By then, my Glutton Special experience had slipped into the folds of times past, until several years later when I found myself at the Cattle Ranch Steakhouse in Sanford, Florida, enjoying dinner with my wife and friends who were visiting from out of town. As we talked with Alan and Donna, our visitors from Massachusetts, I overheard a young man at an adjoining table step up to the plate to face the ageless challenge of manhood. The sign above the register said, 6-pound steak challenge. Eat our 6-pound steak with house salad, baked potato, and bread, and it's free. He took the bait, and as we watched in wonder, this young man in his early 20s devoured the entire thing, piece by piece, all while slugging down gallons of iced tea and finishing with a piece of deep dish apple pie proudly provided by an impressed bystander. Here was this young Hercules, undaunted by this seeming challenge of a lifetime, being cheered by all who witnessed the event, including those sitting at my table. I sunk into a private depression, realizing now that my entire destiny had been nailed shut in a coffin built in an ice cream shop in Kalamazoo when I was only 8 years old. I suddenly realized that I had failed in that very basic trial of manhood that separates us from the animal world. I was condemned that day to a life of mediocrity, and there was nothing I could do but sit on the side and cheer the conquering young god now standing before me. Hey, whoopee, whoopee. Funny thing, though, I still love ice cream, although it clearly marks the day I fell from great potential to existential. The reality of my decline has not weakened my craving for the sweet, cold satisfaction of Rocky Road, pistachio, cherry swirl, tin roof sundae, or a host of other frozen delights that call my name from the local supermarket freezer. And I no longer regret the fact that I lined up that day long ago to make my attempt at chipping my name into the granite wall of manhood, giving my best effort to face the challenge of the sign that read, Glutton Special. Eat 2 and they're free. Some Roman guy named Publius Syrus once said, "No one knows what he can do till he tries." But what the heck, if you're going to be a failure in life, it might as well be for attempting the unreachable. Who knows, you may be the next Christopher Columbus, George Washington, Leonard Bernstein, Davy Crockett, or... Hey, would you mind passing me that water? I'm starting to feel a brain freeze coming on. Well, thanks for listening today. I hope you heard something that gave you a good laugh, and maybe something to lighten your load as you trek through your own life's journey. Please let me know if you like the podcast, and be sure to share it with your friends and others who may need a little fun and an occasional laugh to keep them going. Until next time, this is the MulesWriter saying, see you again soon. Goodbye.